Have you ever found yourself in one of those conversational dead ends where you're totally stuck for something to say and that awkward silence starts to build, it starts to get heavier and heavier, and it becomes almost impossible to say the next thing? Well, as someone who struggled with social anxiety for decades, I know that feeling only too well. But I found 4 very easy ways to get out of these kind of situations, and I want to share them with you in this video today. These tips work really well for if you're meeting new people or you just need to spice up a conversation that's gone a bit dull. So stay tuned to the end because they all fit together and I'm sure you're going to find them really useful. So the first tip is something I picked up in my training as a therapist, and that is to listen actively. This was a concept developed by Carl Rogers. And what normally happens in conversation is that 2 people just stand there and they're usually just in their own heads. While the other person's talking, they're just waiting for their turn to speak. And this creates a very kind of uneven, uncohesive dialogue. And if you've had social anxiety or you're uncomfortable in conversation, you will know the situation even more. You just sit there, you're feeling anxious, the other person's talking, and instead of really absorbing what they're saying, you're just thinking, what am I going to say next? Or how can I get out of this interaction? If you have bad social anxiety, the chances are you're not even really enjoying the conversation. You're just thinking, where's my exit route? When and how can I get out of here as quickly as possible? So the first tip is to listen actively. And this means having this kind of Zen-like, open, engaged awareness. And you just let what the other person is saying come to you. It's a bit like playing a game of catch and throw. So you're just like catching the ball while they're throwing to you. And you can give some little signals back to them that you're understanding what they're saying and encouraging them. These are like little encouragers. And you just, sometimes you can mirror back what they're saying to you, like, oh yeah, that sounds really tough, or yeah, I've been in that situation. So this is a totally different mode of being rather than just sitting there like the deer in the headlights when we're anxious in a conversation or we don't know what to say. We just stay open and relaxed and just absorb what the other person's saying, and it's very helpful to just take a pause and think and really digest what they're saying before we even say anything back, rather than just jumping in with some preconceived idea or just coming out with pat answers that we usually have. The second tip is to ask follow-up questions. And what you find in conversation is that people will give little clues or little cues about what they're really feeling or what they want you to even ask them about, but this is often hidden. So in reality, this might look something like you ask someone, how are you doing? And they reply, I'm okay, but I'm looking after my sister's damn cat. So here we have the overt content of the response and also the hidden emotional content. So it's like an iceberg. So what you find in conversation is that people often have things that they really want to talk about, and they will give you these little cues and clues in conversation. So there's the overt content of the conversation, which is up here. And then there's the subtext. And in the subtext, you will be able to pick up on their emotions, their desires, their fears, and their pain points. So in this conversation where someone mentions the damn cat, you can kind of pick up the idea that they're not very happy looking after the cat. So this opens up a whole world of different questions you can ask them. For example, oh, you have a sister. How many sisters do you have? Is she older than you? I didn't know you had a sister. Where is she from? Where does she live? Has she gone away? Is she on holiday? Where's she gone? How long is she going to be away for? You don't sound very happy about looking after the cat. Do you not like cats? Are you more of a dog person? So there's a whole wealth of stuff you can start picking up on and start probing to ask some questions that open up a whole different world of conversation. You can also think of this a little bit like fishing. People will throw out little bits of conversational bait for you to pick up on. So if this person says, I'm looking after my sister's damn cat, and you just say, oh, that must be nice, I like cats, you're not picking up, you're not playing the game. There's nothing for that person to then open up about and for the conversation to open up and unfold more. So one of the main keys to asking follow-up questions is to show care and interest in the other person. And I've always found that if you can muster up some genuine interest in the person that you're talking to, it makes the whole thing so much more enjoyable. And you get out of this mode of thinking where you're just looking for the exit and just trying to get out of the conversation or the interaction. Try to show some genuine interest. So in this case, you might say, oh, that must be tiring. How are you finding it? Or that's really kind of you. How do you do that often? So then this can lead into so many different areas. They might say, oh yeah, well, my sister actually works abroad half the time. So she splits her time between New York and London, so I have to look after the cat every 4 weeks. Or any other infinite number of different directions this conversation could now go in. So really try to show some care and interest. So if you just politely probe and try to build up a picture of the other person, it makes the conversation so interesting for you. And I've always been interested in psychology, so I'm always kind of low-key psychoanalyzing other people anyway. But if you adopt that kind of mindset in a non-judgmental, just a curious, genuinely interested and kind way, it makes the whole interaction so much more interesting for you, and the other person feels so much more seen and really appreciates your interest, because at the end of the day, most people's favorite topic to talk about is themselves. And if you give them a chance, people will tell you a lot of stuff about themselves because they're often not seen and not heard in their daily life. And they really appreciate the opportunity to actually speak to someone, maybe unload a bit or just share their experiences. So another good point to bear in mind when asking follow-up questions is try to ask questions which spark emotion in the other person. So you want to try and tap into their dreams, their passions, their interests, maybe their vision for their future, what their purpose is. So you could ask people questions like, well, what would you like to do if you could do anything in the world? Or what's your dream job? Or what's your vision for your life? What's your overall passion and purpose? And these aren't necessarily questions you're going to dive right into with people that you don't know. But after warming up a little bit in conversation, these are the kind of questions that people get excited and passionate about thinking about and answering. So try to spark emotions in the other person. Tip number 3 is to develop your personality through expanding your mind through hobbies, interests, learning, reading. Okay, so I coach many guys who feel that they're too boring in conversation, or they're intellectually inferior to other people and they're scared to speak. But everybody has interests, everybody has hobbies. And if you feel that you're really lacking in that area, then maybe you can expand those. So that's what I did. I started to read up on more stuff, and I started to play games on my phone where I would have an app that would teach me world capitals. I started to get very interested in world geography. And this was great because if I bumped into someone from Latvia like I did the other day, I would say, oh, are you from Riga? And they're like, no, I'm from a small town near to Riga. But it shows that you know a little bit about their country. And especially if it's a more obscure country, they're often surprised, and it can create an instant rapport. So you can educate yourselves on just a bit of popular world geography, world history. So you can read things like these online magazines called Discover Magazine. This is a tip I got, which was to just read this very condensed, it's like a condensed version of a National Geographic, and it just gives you a brief overview of a lot of things, from like AI to ancient language to ancient civilization to nanotechnology, all different areas. So it just gives you a very like shallow but broad understanding of things. I also learned a number of languages, and although I didn't study them to mastery level, I can say hello in a lot of languages like Korean, Vietnamese, French, Russian, German, Polish, Spanish, Italian. And this can also just help to create that instant rapport. I also tried to develop myself by picking up more hobbies and interests, whether that was surfing, basketball, tennis, sports, as I say, languages as well. I took up some salsa dancing, lots of different things. So it just gives you more things in common to talk about with people. My 4th tip is to not filter yourself. Oftentimes we don't say things because we think, oh, that's a stupid question. We get stuck up in our head and we think, I shouldn't say that. But there's no such thing as a stupid question. As long as it isn't rude or offensive or too familiar, then there is no such thing as a stupid question. If it's genuine and it's from the heart and you're interested in the other person, then just go ahead and ask it. So there really are no stupid questions. Secondly, you can talk about anything as big or small as you like. People generally, I have found, enjoy little whimsical conversations, whether it's about their favorite seasoning on peanuts or the color of the shirt that they're wearing or anything. There's a kind of mode of conversation which people pick up on when you fall into that kind of whimsical chat about minutiae in life. And it's just a fun way to chop things up with people, talking about silly little things. People do enjoy talking about the fluff in life. So don't feel that, oh, this is not a groundbreaking theory or some massive concept that I want to talk about. You can just be like, oh, that's a nice pattern on your shirt. Are you more of a zigzag man or a check man? Stuff like that. People pick up on it. It has a kind of slight sense of humor to it. It's whimsical and it's fun. So don't hold back just asking little fluffy questions like that. And the absolute most important thing to bear in mind is that People are dying of loneliness. We are going through a loneliness epidemic in the world right now, fueled by social media and all the disconnection that breeds. And a lot of the guys that I coach say that they don't want to start interactions with people because they feel that they're going to be burdening them, or the other person will reject them and they don't want to speak to them. This is absolutely not true. Across the board, in my own experience and what I've seen through other people, is that we are like plants which are drying up and dying for lack of social connection. So water the other person, feed them with your questions and your interest. They will be so happy to open up and have some connection, because there's not enough real face-to-face social connection. We are social primates. We are wired to actually thrive from conversation and connection. It releases a flood of serotonin and oxytocin in our bodies when we do have that connection and interaction, and that's why it feels so good. So don't doubt that. People are dying of loneliness. You're not the only one who maybe wants to reach out and have a conversation. So do someone else a favor and actually ask them a question, open a conversation with them and talk with them, because there is a loneliness epidemic going on worldwide and people are literally dying of loneliness. The US Surgeon General has talked about this. You can see many reports saying that loneliness is more dangerous to your health than smoking. So please, please don't hold back. People need this connection and you're feeding them and nourishing them by starting these conversations. Okay, just to sum up these 4 tips which will help you in conversation. Number 1 is to listen actively. Don't just be stood there like a deer in the headlights trying to figure out your escape plan and how you can just get out of there and what you can just say next to end the interaction as quickly as possible. Actually listen actively, open your awareness, get ready to catch the ball that they're conversationally throwing to you. Number 2, ask follow-up questions. Show interest and care. Try to spark their emotions. They're throwing out bait for you to catch hold of, okay? So notice the bait, catch hold of the bait, and open the conversation up by asking leading and interesting follow-up questions. Number 3, you can develop your personality a little bit if you feel that you're lacking in that area. Pick up new hobbies, interests, just read a bit more widely, even just learn a few world capitals or a few snippets of different languages. That can really help to build rapport. And 4th and finally, do not filter yourself. There's no such thing as a stupid question. People like to talk about fluff and people need to have conversations. So it's social activism by talking like this. This is what the world needs right now in the face of TikTok and all this brain rot and digital fentanyl, which we're getting through our social media. The world needs you to speak to people more, so please don't filter yourself. I hope that's really helpful for you. If you struggle with social anxiety and conversation and awkward silences, then I know you're really going to enjoy the other content on my channel here and here.